Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be starting with emergency medicine classes. So all of us will see lot of emergency patients who require emergency care. So whenever you are posted in casualty or in emergency, you'll be seeing lot of cases like poisoning, snake bite. Patient will be coming with heat stroke, arrhythmias. So all these patients require an emergency management. So from today I'll be starting classes on emergency medicine, and our first class will be on snake bite. Snake bites are more common in tropical regions like our country, that is India, where farmers are many in number. So we grow a lot of eatables. So farmers are more, and they'll be working barefoot in their fields. They are more susceptible for these snake bites. In whole world, these snakes are classified into important four families. Mainly the all the snakes will be are classified into four families. One is the Viperidae. So where the vipers are come under this Viperidae family, like Asian vipers are there, and we have old world vipers. Then we have Elapidae, second one. So where we have cobras, krait, and coral snakes. Colubridae, it's a large family in which most of the species are non-venomous. And the last one is the Lamniophidae, where we have burrowing asps. So these are the few examples in under the each family of snakes. So important four families of snakes are Viperidae, Elapidae, Colubridae, and Lamniophidae. So how to identify snakes, poisonous and non-poisonous snakes? See, looking at the anatomy, it is very difficult, or looking at the snake, it is very difficult, and it can be notoriously misleading to tell that so it's a poisonous or this is a non-poisonous snake. So it can often be misleading. So, but there are certain like features to identify the snakes. Like in vipers, they'll have a triangular head and they'll have a elliptical pupils. That is not electrical; it is elliptical pupils, shape of the pupils, and they'll have a enlarged maxillary fangs. In pit vipers, they have a heat sensing organs called as pits on each side of their head that assist in locating their prey and as well as aiming the strike. Rattlesnakes, these are also a family of poisonous snakes. They have interlocking hollow keratin plates that is called as the rattle on the tip of their tail that emits buzzing sound when they move their tail very fast. So they'll be emitting a buzzing sound. So the structure or the anatomy of the venom apparatus of a snake, I'm going to tell you now. So bilateral venom glands are situated behind the eyes, and they are connected by ducts to hollow anterior maxillary fangs. So, in between vipers and elapids, what is the difference between these fangs? In vipers, fangs are long and highly mobile, and they are retracted against the roof of the mouth when the snake is at rest. So, it is very long, and they are retracted against the roof of the snake when they are at rest. Whereas in elapids, fangs are short and relatively they are fixed in posture. Approximately 20% of the pit viper bites, and a maximum, so up to 75% of the sea snakes are dry bites. So not all the snake bites are poisonous. So only 20% of pit viper bites and 75% of sea snakes will be dry bite. And significant envenomation probably occurs in approximately 50% of all venomous snake bites. Only 50% will be venomous. Another 50%, this is on an approximate. If we take, whenever a venomous snake bites, only 50% are venomous and another 50% will be dry bites. What is the venom composition? See, venom, whatever the snake is injecting into a prey or into a person, so it is a complex mixture of enzymes, polypeptides, glycoproteins, and there are other constituents. For example, they will have proteolytic enzymes. What do these proteolytic enzymes do? They will lead to local tissue necrosis. They affect coagulation pathway at multiple levels, not at a single level, at multiple levels, and they will impair the organ function. They also have hemorrhages in their venom. These hemorrhages lead to vascular leakage, spontaneous local and systemic bleeds, leading to a shift of fluid and profound hypotension. The venom also contains hyaluronidases, which promotes spread of venom through connective tissue. They'll have the venom also have myocardial depressant, which depresses the myocardium, reduces cardiac output, and can lead to arrhythmias. Also, there are bradykinins, which leads to vasodilatation and profound hypotension. And certain neurotoxins will be present in neurotoxic elapid bites, especially cobra and krait. These neurotoxins acts at neuromuscular junction post-synaptically, and they block the transmission and they lead to muscle paralysis. So this is about the composition of the venom. So it has multiple proteolytic enzymes, and they have hyaluronidases, they'll have bradykinins, myocardial depressants, neurotoxins. So many constituents are present in a venom, and few of the toxins will predominate in certain snakes. For examples, in vipers, it is the hemorrhagens, proteolytic enzymes are predominantly present. Whereas in case of cobra or the krait bite, especially the krait, which contains a neurotoxin, so which is very dangerous snake bite, which leads to death due to respiratory muscle paralysis within few minutes if not identified and treated. What are the clinical manifestations of a patient who is presenting to you with snake bite? Most of the viper bites and some elapids like cobra, they lead to necrotized tissue swelling, local pain, and there will be ecchymosis. And if left untreated for few hours, then there will be formation of hemorrhagic or serum filled vesicles and bullae. Patient might complain of generalized sweating, fatigue, nausea, change in the taste, mouth numbness. Either there can be bradycardia or there can be tachycardia. Few patients even might have muscle fasciculations, pulmonary edema, renal dysfunction. All the major organs are involved. They can have neurological dysfunction. Already I told you envenomation by neurotoxic elapids such as crates. They cause neurological dysfunction. So they can have like headache, paresthesia or numbness and altered mental status. Then they'll have early involvement of cranial nerves, that is the ptosis, which precedes all other neurological manifestations. Initially patient will have ptosis, then they can develop difficulty in swallowing, followed by peripheral motor weakness. Then if severe envenomation is there, then it leads to muscle paralysis including the muscles of respiration, and it leads to death from respiratory failure and aspiration. Very, very important. So once we know we have identified the snake and the patient has developed all the clinical manifestations, how are we going to treat the patient with snake bite? Very important. So important point in venomous snake bite treatment is field management, that is pre-hospital management and hospital management. Each and every person should be educated in the villages or in the field that how to manage a patient who is bitten by a snake. That is very important, because if the patient is not taken care of his snake bite wound, then there are chances that he'll have a long term morbidity as well as mortality rate will increase because of ignorance in pre hospital management. In pre hospital management, a person bitten by venomous snake, what they should think is he should be rapidly transported to a medical facility which is having all the supportive care as well as the anti-venom therapy. So if you like, they might take to a small clinic where the anti-venom therapy is not available and supportive care is not available, which is of no use. They'll be delaying the transport of the patient as well as delaying the treatment. And they should be advised, or they should be educated, people should be educated that any jewelry or any tight fitting clothing near the bite site should be removed as soon as they see the patient is bitten on the like maybe upper limb or in the lower limb, especially near the foot around the ankle. So if there is any jewelry is there or the tight fitting clothing is there near the bite site, it should be removed immediately, and the wound should be cleaned with soap and running water, and it should be covered with a sterile dressing if available. And it is reasonable to apply a splint. What is the purpose of applying the splint? It is to immobilize the bitten area, immobilize the joint. Otherwise the person will be moving his limb, moving the proximal and the distal joint, so that the spread of the venom is very fast. So it is reasonable to apply a splint to immobilize the bitten area, and it should be maintained in a neutral position. Sometimes you might have seen in your clinical practice or in the emergency department, the people would have got the snake also along with the person who is a patient who is bitten by the snake. They would have caught the snake, either the dead or alive, so they have got the snake also, but it could be dangerous. So it is not advised that the snake is captured and brought dead or alive. Instead of that, nowadays everybody will be having the mobile, so they can take a digital photograph, so from a safe distance, which can assist in the snake identification and treatment decisions. So you can advise or educate the people in and around the villages, or even nowadays the cities also, because we are encroaching upon their territory. So even what we so call territory, even in our hospital also we have so many times seen the snakes. So we need to educate each and every person that whatever the tight fitting clothing is there, it should be removed immediately, and reasonably apply a splint to maintain the bitten area in a neutral position, and no need to capture the snake. So you can just take a digital photograph just to identify and assisting the in the treatment of the patient. Other thing what they used to do in olden days is they used to incise the bitten area, okay, or the incise the bite area, and they used to apply the suction, or sometimes what we used to see in olden movies and all, they used to suck the venom from the bite side, which is highly objectable and it should not be done. So these things should be avoided, as these can exacerbate the local tissue damage and they increase the risk of infection, and it has not been shown as effective. So don't ask anyone or advise anybody to incise or suck the venom from the bite site. And also similarly ineffective and potentially harmful are the application of ice, then electric shock. So few people used to do that because they used to think that the ice and the electric shock, that is extreme of temperature, can kill the can deactivate the venom. So that is not advisable. Then tourniquet application, which is a concept of applying a tourniquet, which shouldn't be applied. Okay, tourniquet use can result in the loss of function, ischemia, as well as the limb amputation, even in the absence of envenomation. Already I told you, in 50% of the cases, even if it is a poisonous snake bite, it could be a dry bite. So if they apply a tourniquet, it can lead to limb amputation, limb ischemia, even if there is an absence of envenomation. So it will be causing more harm than doing any benefit. Therefore, tourniquet application is not advisable. There is what is called as pressure immobilization. See, pressure immobilization, it should be used only in cases in which the offending snake is identified and it is primarily neurotoxic. Then only you should apply pressure immobilization. It is a primarily neurotoxic snake, and the rescuer is skilled in pressure wrap application. Whoever is applying the pressure wrap, he should be a skilled person in his territory. And that is not the unnecessary, all the necessary supplies are readily available. And the victim should be fully immobilized and he should be carried to a medical care. He is not allowed to walk and go. He should be carried to the medical care. If all these facilities are available or all the prerequisites are filled, then only there should be pressure immobilization. One thing is, the offending snake is a primarily neurotoxic snake, and the person who is applying the pressure wrap is a skilled person, and all the necessary instruments are readily available, and patient should be carried to the treating hospital. It should not be made to walk. So these prerequisites should be filled before pressure immobilization. So combination of all the four prerequisites is very very difficult in areas where these snake bite rates are high. So practically speaking, pressure immobilization is difficult to do. If the person is not skilled, no necessary supplies are available, it is better not to do that. But you should know, if everything is available, definitely you can go for pressure immobilization. See, in pressure immobilization, there is a particular pressure which need to be applied. Okay, the wrap pressure must be precise. It should be 40 to 70 millimeters of mercury in upper extremity and 55 to 70 millimeters of mercury in lower extremity. Once the patient is treated in the pre-hospital, then patient need to be shifted to hospital. So how we are going to treat the patient in hospital? That is hospital management. Patient has reached the hospital, we need to focus on airway, breathing and circulation. ABC, that is airway, breathing, circulation. Patient's vital signs, cardiac rhythm, oxygen saturation and urine output to be monitored. These are the vital things we need to monitor. Supplement the patient with fluids. Most of the time, what these villagers tell the victim is they won't allow him to drink water. That will cause more harm. You need to educate them upon that also. In my clinical practice, what I have seen is most of them will be dehydrated when they reach the hospital, because they would not have allowed them to drink water. They would have kept him fasting, no drinking of water. So patient will be fully dehydrated. Educate them. Whenever you see a patient relatives, everybody need to be educated. So next time when it happens, they can take precautionary steps and proper guidelines will be followed. Fluid resuscitation with isotonic saline, that is around 20 to 40 ml per kg IV infusion need to be started if there is any hemodynamic instability. Otherwise also you can start with the intravenous fluid, that is isotonic saline. Then if he is not responding for saline infusion, his BP is not responding, then give a trial of 5% albumin, that is 10 to 20 ml per kg IV infusion can be given. Still his BP is low, then you can give vasopressors. Vasopressors like noradrenaline and dopamine. It should be added only if venom induced shock is persisting after aggressive volume resuscitation. Still the hypotension is there, BP is not picked up, then you can start with vasopressor, norepinephrine or dopamine. After starting the IV fluid, you need to take thorough history from the patient, if he is able to give the history, or from the patient relatives or the attenders. Then finish the complete physical examination. You need to check for the bite site, then any skin changes, swelling. If swelling is present, you need to mark till where the swelling is there, because there will be rapid increase in the swelling size if there is an envenomation. So you need to be very vigilant. Then any bandages and wraps which are applied, tourniquet that is applied, need to be removed. Send for the complete hemogram, because you need to check the hemoglobin levels, how much blood is lost, is there any hemolysis occurring, then blood grouping, and also the incomplete hemogram you need to check for the platelet levels. So there can be thrombocytopenia. Then blood grouping, if the patient requires blood transfusion, so you should be knowing the blood group, and cross matching should be kept ready. Renal function tests, ECG, chest X-ray, these are all the necessary things or the necessary investigations required to be done in the initial step. And also another important investigation is the arterial blood gas analysis, that is the ABG. One important test is there, that is the 20-minute whole blood clotting test, which is used to reliably diagnose coagulopathy. How we are going to do this 20-minute whole blood clotting test? You need to draw fresh blood, a few millimeters, maybe 5 ml, okay, of fresh blood which is drawn from the patient, and it should be placed in a new clean plain glass tube, that is for example a test tube, and it should be left undisturbed for 20 minutes. And after 20 minutes the tube should be tipped to 45 degrees. You need to see whether the blood is still liquid or the clot has formed. If clot has not formed, the blood is not clotted, then that means that there is a coagulopathy. So that is one important test, 20-minute whole blood clotting test. So looking at that, you can start the antivenom therapy. If there is coagulopathy, start with antivenom therapy. Once the antivenom therapy is given, you have to repeat this coagulation test as well as this 20-minute whole blood clotting test once in every 6 hours. If there is no coagulopathy or 20-minute whole blood clotting test is negative in the first step itself, then you have to repeat every hour and see to check whether the coagulopathy has set in or not. Another important investigation in patients with snake bite is the measurement of creatinine kinase. So because sometimes there can be rhabdomyolysis, muscles will be broken down, okay, so which can increase the chances of muscle weakness, as well as the patient will go in for very important renal failure. So check for the creatinine kinase levels. See, the mainstay of treatment of venomous snake bite resulting in significant envenomation is the prompt administration of specific antivenoms. So what are these antivenoms, and how these antivenoms are produced? See, antivenoms are usually produced by injecting the animals with the identified venomous snake venom. So which are medically important snakes are there. So very prevalent snakes are there, venomous snakes. You are going to collect the venom from these snakes, and you have to inject it into the animals. Generally horses or the sheep. So once the stock animals they start developing the antibodies to these venoms, their serum will be harvested and the antibodies will be isolated for antivenom preparation. So how this antivenom will act? This antivenom are administered, whenever they are administered to a patient, they will go and bind to the circulating venom and they will activate the venom components. Before this venom can attach to the target tissue and cause the deleterious effects. But antivenoms are not specific, they are very much specific to a particular snake. There is no cross reactivity. If you give antivenom of one snake, it will protect from the other snake also. No, it will not protect. So they are very much snake specific antivenoms. So antivenom, whatever the anti-snake venom we are using in India, it is a polyvalent anti-snake venom. Okay, there can be monovalent anti-snake venom also. Polyvalent is because it contains the antibodies against the four important snakes which are prevalent in India. That is saw-scaled viper, pit viper, saw-scaled viper, Russell viper, cobra, and krait. So these are the 4 snakes which are commonly leading to envenomations and very serious complications in patients with snake bite in India. So whatever the antivenom we are using in India is a polyvalent anti-snake venom containing the antivenom to all these 4 snakes. So you can give this ASV or the anti-snake venom to all the 4 bites. Okay, all the venom which is injected by these snakes will be neutralized by one polyvalent anti-snake venom. If other than these 4 snakes have bitten, then this ASV will not be of helpful. So that is why each country what they have done is, depending upon the prevalent types of poisonous snakes in their country, they would have developed the this anti-snake venom. Either it could be monovalent or this could be polyvalent. You can see here the anti-snake venom. It comes in a powder. There is a liquid that is distilled water which is used for the reconstitution of this is the distilled water. Okay, this is comes in powder. So both will be mixed together and this will be reconstituted, and it will be given in 250 ml of or 500. Usually we use the 500 ml of NS. So we'll give, this is the one vial. Okay, so depending upon the type of the snake bite or the severity of the snake bite, we'll give 4 to 6 vials or more than 6 vials in snake bite patients. So average dry weight of the venom which is injected by a Russell viper or cobra is around 63 milligrams. What you have to remember, whenever a cobra bite is there or the Russell viper bite is there, average dry weight of the venom is 63 milligram. So each vial, I showed you the vial. So each vial, if you are giving, it neutralizes around 6 milligram of cobra and 6 milligram of Russell viper, 4.5 milligram of krait and 4.5 milligram of saw-scaled viper venom. So you can calculate. So if there is a cobra bite, so then there will be 63 milligram. So he might require around 10 to 12 vials of this anti-snake venom to neutralize the cobra bite. Okay, so depending upon that, you can give the you can calculate the doses of anti-snake venom. So initial dose should be 8 to 12 vials, and the snake will inject the same amount of venom into the children also. So it will not differentiate between either the adult or the children. Oh, he's an adult, I should inject more venom, and okay, look at it, this is a baby, I need to inject a very little venom. So nothing like that. So snake will be injecting the same amount of venom to every bite, in every bite. So the dose of ASV will be remaining same for both children and adult. The dose won't vary. So it is always given in IV infusion form, you need to remember. And before giving the anti-snake venom, you have to give a test dose of this anti-snake venom, which is given through IV route itself. And even after giving the test dose, when you start the infusion, there are chances that the patient will develop an acute reaction. Acute anaphylactic reaction can occur sometimes, or the other reactions can also occur. So if there is a reaction, so stop the infusion immediately. Then you need to treat with standard dose of epinephrine, antihistamines like Avil injection, and steroids, that is hydrocortisone, can be given. So once the reaction is controlled, you can restart the antivenom slowly and as soon as possible, and you can dilute the anti-snake venom with a larger volume of normal saline to reduce the infection. and you have to monitor clinical status every hourly, so that if there is any recurrence of anaphylactic reaction or any other allergic reactions. So that is about the treatment of the venomous snakes. There is also separate treatment for the neurotoxic snakes. So the treatment will be different. So you have to give the ASV, as well as you have to treat them with acetylcholinesterase inhibitors like eutrophonium and neostigmine, which can promote neurological improvement in patients who are bitten by this post-synoptic neurotoxic Elapidae. So how you are going to treat? So you have to pre-treat them with atropine 0.6 milligram IV, that is to reduce the complications of acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. Once you give the atropine 0.6 milligram means one vial or the 1 ml of atropine will have 0.6 milligram. Give IV, then you need to treat the patient with neostigmine, that is which is commonly used in Indian setup. 0.02 milligram per kg IV or IM can be given. If the objective improvement is evident, that is the neurological symptoms are improving, is respiratory muscle paralysis or cranial nerve involvement is improving, you can give neostigmine 0.5 milligram. IV can be given, IM can be given, or subcutaneous can be given every hourly as needed. Along with that, you have to put one side in another IV line atropine 0.6 milligram, that is 1 vial or 1 ml in 1 pint NS continuous IV infusion need to be given, and you need to closely monitor the airway and perform the endotracheal intubation whenever it is required. In some of the patients, blood products are rarely necessary. So if there is hemolysis, then blood products can be transfused, or coagulopathy is there. For example, clotting, I told you, in the venom composition, which can inhibit the coagulation pathway at different levels. So patient requires the clotting factors. So FFP can be transfused. And if there is a rhabdomyolysis, it leads to acute tubular necrosis and renal failure. Some patients may even require hemodialysis until their renal parameters improve. This is about the snake bite, how you are going to identify the snake bite and also treat the snake bite. Snake bite, they can ask for 5 mark, or anti-snake venom also can be asked for maybe 3 marks. So important one from practical aspect. So, and also whenever in your emergency department, you need to identify the snake, and you should be identify the snake. If you are not in the state to identify the snake, at least you should be able to identify the clinical manifestations of snake bite, serious envenomation, and you should be ready to treat the patient with anti-snake venom. Thank you.